Hi guys, welcome back to a new wildlife portrait tutorial series. So for this series we're going to be working on a hare, and I've provided the reference photo for you to follow along with this one. I've drawn mine out on a 12 by 16 scale, so sort of A3 size, and I've sort of drawn him off to the right hand side of the page, so you can see this side, he's more towards the right side of the page than the left side. If I just zoom out just a little bit, you can see that he's sort of slightly off centre, which is what I want for this portrait. So the first thing that I'm going to do is start with the eye of the hare. So we're just going to do this part in this tutorial part. So, if you can hear my cats in the background, they're fighting as usual, and I cannot get them to stop fighting at the moment, so if you hear some noise, that's what that is. So first things first, what I'm going to do is just erase the graphite line of the highlight within the eye there. And then I'm going to use my my Prismacolor, let's get it right, my Prismacolor white, to just add a little bit of the highlight in the eye here. So it's not quite a sharp pencil, it's fairly blunt on one side has a point, and I'm just using the pointiest side just to add in the shapes of this little highlight bit. So I'm just colouring it where I can see it on the reference. And then there's a tiny little white spot just to the side, just here. So I'm pushing quite hard with my white pencil to really indent the paper and get that white down. So the next thing I'm going to do is just gently erase the graphite around the outside of the iris, and also gently erase the graphite around the very outer edge of the eye as well. So just a very, very faint line, which you can see there. And then I'm going to use some nougat just to outline those two areas. So I'm just going to use a semi-sharp nougat pencil and just outline this. And then again, I'm going to use that to outline the iris area. Just like that. Then we're just going to add in the dark section between that outer line and the iris line. So we're going to add the dark section in the eye. We're going to first of all layer the nougat. Just very, very lightly. Then we're going to layer some burnt umber on top of that. So we're just going to add this all over. I'm trying to keep my strokes sort of in like a circular motion mixed with a little bit of shading here and there. So every now and then I'm just doing a little bit of a circular motion to try and feel a bit more of the paper. But a majority of the time I'm just using some general shading techniques, just going back and forth with my pencil, working in the opposite direction as well if I need to cover more of the paper, or working in a circular motion. So once we've covered the bit of the eye with the burnt umber, we can go over with some walnut brown, and then after that I'm going to go in the darkest areas with some dark sepia. So again, the same sort of thing, just gentle back and forth motion. I'm trying to just add the walnut brown to the darkest areas, so I'm just judging the values in the eye there and trying to decide whether I need to add a lot of dark to a certain area or whether I can leave it quite light. So the main majority of the dark areas are above the eye here and just underneath, just here. So that's where I'm adding a majority of the walnut brown. And then I'm going to go straight over with some dark sepia. My cats. Oh dear. So, where we added the walnut brown, I'm just going to add this dark sepia, just to really darken this up. And just like that. See, I think that's dark enough for now. If it needs darkening once we add some of the colour within the iris and everything, then I can go ahead and redarken the outside of the eye as well. For the inside of the eye, we're going to erase the line which I've drawn for the pupil. And then we're going to first of all just go in with some warm grey 5 and just outline where that sits. So going back over the graphite line that we've just erased, and then just adding in the pupil shape. So it's quite a nice big dark pupil that we need to add in. And then all I'm going to do, once we've got that shape outlined, we're going to gently outline the highlight, that white highlight in there. Just fill out the shapes. And then using some circular motions, we're going to fill in the rest of the pupil as well. So we're just using a circular motion with our pencil, creating some nice smooth coverage and tone. Then we're going to go over with a secondary layer of the warm grey 5. You can see it just gradually gets it darker. Just adding in the shape and any shading that we can see. In the pupil there. So in that, we're also going to add, just over the top of all of that, some dark indigo. So we're going to use our circular motion and just add some dark indigo in there. Cover all of that area. I really do apologise for the noise of my cats. They are just going absolutely berserk. And then over that dark indigo, we're going to add the dark sepia. So quite a lot of this pupil is actually a flat tone. So we're going to try and make it as dark as we can with our dark sepia and possibly a little bit of black once we've added the iris colour in as well. But for now, we're just adding in as much dark as we can. So we're going to go ahead and define a little more of this highlight area after we've done the iris colour. So we're going to get straight on and do the iris colour now. We're going to put a base layer down of ivory. And these are all polychromos pencils so far, I forgot to mention. So I'm going to put a base layer down of ivory. Again, I'm using a circular motion to try and cover all of the paper here. Going around the highlight area that we added with the white pencil at the very beginning. And then we're going to add some cream colours and slowly build up to that nice warm brown that we can see for the tone of the hare's eye. So I'm going to use a luminance colour. I'm going to use the brown ochre 50%. And I'm just going to layer this down all over this iris. So all up to the very edges, up to the pupil. And I'm using the circular motion with the pencil as well to try and fill as much of the paper as possible. So just making sure that I outline the highlight within that eye as well with this pencil. Just filling in around the outside, just trying to get a nice even coverage. So now we're going to add a little layer of the burnt ochre from the polychromos, and again we're just going to add this all over. We're going to try and build up that tone of the iris. So adding it all over. Then we're going to use our next colour, which is going to be the sanguine. And with this, we're going to start to add this into the darker sections of the iris. So around the outer edge of the iris is where the majority of this colour is going to go. So using little tiny circular motions to try and build all of that. Making it quite dark on the outer edge so it blends nicely with the outside fur, which we'll add eventually. And we're going to start to bring some of the colour into the highlight as well, to depict all the different shapes and the reflections which we can see going on in there. So trying to make the shapes that we can see, and then we're going to switch and move straight on to our burnt sienna. So we're going to add this on the very outer edges again and get our iris on the outer edge here as dark as possible. We're going to try and blend it smoothly with the rest of the colours that we've added in the iris as well, and that's where these little circular motions really help. So really making sure that we add this around the outer edge to try and get that really nice and dark. So before we add any more colours within the iris itself, I'm going to go ahead and reassess the darks around the eye, and we're going to blend some of those darks into the iris itself as well. So I'm going to use the walnut brown and the dark sepia pencil to do that. So we're going to take the walnut brown first and continue to define this outer line around this side and along the top of the eye. And then around the bottom is where a majority of these colours blend into the rest of the eye. So we're going to make sure that we've got a really nice line around the very bottom edge. And then we're going to gently shade this colour into the iris in the corner, the left corner of the eye here. And I'm going to do that just by using tiny little circular motions with the pencil to slowly build up the colour. I'm just using a very light pressure as well. And we're going to mix that with a little bit of the burnt sienna and bring that all the way to the eye, to the pupil there. We need to make sure that we blend this out with the rest of the iris as well, so the rest of the colours in there, make sure we blend all that out. Then we're going to take our dark sepia, just redefine the line there and along the very bottom edge, and then gradually shade some of this up from the bottom edge there. Now I'm going to add a bright colour from my luminance box. Just need to move my camera ever so slightly. I'm going to add some of the orange. It's just called orange from the luminance. And I'm going to add a little bit of this to the iris just to bring some luminosity, because The orange in the polychromos isn't quite up to the job for this, I found previously when doing this colour eye. So just add a bit of the orange from the luminance and it really brings it to life. So within the actual eye itself, and that pupil, I'm going to add a little bit of black, just to bring it out. So I'm going to really make it dark around the edge of the pupil there, and the top edge. And then around the very outside of the pupil, where the iris colour meets it, I'm just going to add a very thin band of white to try and lighten that up ever so slightly. Just ever so slightly, just to bring a little hint of light to that. And then every now and then I'm just going to reassess the colours and everything in the eye, shading a little bit of the burnt umber and shading a bit of the burnt sienna on the top there where there's a little bit of a shadow. But now we need to shade the highlight within the pupil itself. So for that we're going to use some cold grey, which just needs sharpening. This one is the cold grey 4. Just going to sharpen it up and then we can shade a little bit of this in there. So a nice sharp pencil for this. And all I'm going to do is just gently shade in the areas which are darkest in that highlight. So we're making sure that we form the shapes of the highlight. So looking at the reference and seeing if there's any patterns, which you can see, and then adding those in and shading them up, and then going over with some dark sepia and just gently shading that over as well. And then over the entire highlight within the pupil, I'm just going to gently shade this cold grey 4 to dull it down a little. So I'm going to do a cross-hatching method of shading and just work my pencil in one direction and then go over in the opposite direction for maximum coverage. I'm going to also take some dark indigo, which I'm going to sharpen up to a nice point. And I'm going to add some of this into the highlight here, mainly on the top edge. I'm going to mix this with some Delft blue. So adding some Delft blue in there, just on the very top. And then using a sharp dark sepia, so we're going to sharpen the dark sepia up to a really sharp point now. So we've got a nice sharp point in our dark sepia. We're going to really define the edges, the sharp edges of the pupil where it meets this bit of the highlight. So we've got some really dark sections which we're just adding in. Got some bits which intermingle. can roughly make out some shapes there. And then if anything needs lightening, which a little bit of it does, I can use my white pencil, which again needs a little bit of a sharpen. And then we got a nice sharp point on our white pencil, so we can add a little bit of white detail back in. And then shade over again where's necessary. If I need to, I can add a little bit of the mauve, just to add a little bit of colour tone variation to the highlight there, but not too much. Just a little bit of purple and blue showing through, and just continuing to redefine that reflection until we're completely happy with it. I can also use some light blue colours to add some like sky reflection into that, so I could use the genuine cobalt blue from the Luminance and just colour this reflection blue. Nice light blue there, like that. So back towards the iris now, I'm going to use the walnut brown and just continue to define a little bit of this colour of the iris where it meets the highlight here. So being very, very gentle, just using the walnut brown very lightly, and also just using some nougat here as well to help blend the colours together. Just making sure that we've got all of the correct marks and patterns down in there to create a really nice, realistic looking pupil. I'm going to add some manganese violet to help bring the colours of the orange out. So I'm just using the manganese violet on this little section of the eye here, and just going to add it to this section down here as well. So with my super sharp Polychromos black pencil, I'm just adding the top eyelashes here, just making sure that they're all nice and dark, and then blending them around to where the fur is going to go. And then on the bottom, I'm just redefining these lines and the inner corner of the eye, make sure that everything's nice and dark and how it should be. And then if anything needs shading, like this little bit of this white line here, just going to shade with some nougat just to bring that back. And if anything needs adjusting within the eye, I can use my white pencil to go over and bring any light parts back. Just add a little bit of shine to the eyeball. Just redefine the top of the pupil there. So just adjusting it as necessary to make it look as realistic as possible. As I said, the iris actually looks quite flat, but if you want to, you can add various colours over this. So I'm going to add some mauve, just a little hint of it, just to signal like the concave of the eye, which you might not get because the pupil area of this hare's eye is just so flat and black The only real indication of any concaveness is from the highlights. So when you're trying to work the highlight, make sure that you are accurately following the shapes. So for instance, this shape along the bottom section of this bit here, it actually curves down, and that will help indicate the curvature of the eyeball for you. So you can always work back over a dark section with your white. If you really need to, you can use some solvent blender to help dissolve any layers of wax or pencil buildup that you have and you're having trouble adding the colours over the top. So if you're struggling, use a little bit of solvent blender to help dissolve that and then add your colours back over. It'll be a lot easier. So that's it for this part of the tutorial. In the next part, we're going to start to add the fur around the eyes. So just going to build up some fur layers, just general fur work, which is nice and easy, which is simple for me to instruct. And yeah, that's basically it. So I will see you guys in the next tutorial part, and I hope you've enjoyed this one, and I hope you will enjoy drawing this hare along with me. Bye!